common sense to help people through this difficult period. Joining me live now is Fiona Martin. She is the chair of the Select Committee on Mental Health and Suicide Prevention and a Liberal MP in Western Sydney. Thanks so much for your time, Fiona. Appreciate it. Tell us about curfews and how they're affecting the community and whether you think they should be lifted.
Yeah, Laura, 4 out of 6 of my LGAs are in harsh lockdown. So that means that on one side of Parramatta Road, I have constituents who on Monday will be able to have a picnic with 4 other fully vaccinated people. And on the other side of Parramatta Road, I have people that are in harsh lockdown. And on top of that, they have a curfew in place. Now, curfews are having a significant impact on people's wellbeing and mental health. It is important that decisions are made that are sensible, reasonable and fair. And at this point in time, I'm very concerned about what the curfew is doing for people in my area of Reid. I've had phone calls from constituents who are doctors in hospitals that are nearby, with young people presenting in emergency departments as young as 7 years old with suicidal ideation. This is very, very concerning. And we know already that mental health is of great concern to people that have had prolonged lockdowns here in New South Wales. The calls at Lifeline, the calls at Beyond Blue are up significantly compared to 2 years ago. We know that people are suffering and we need to make decisions that are sensible, reasonable and fair.
Fiona, the proof of curfews working to drive case numbers down is sketchy at very best, but the proof that it causes this mental anguish and anxiety is much more obvious, isn't it?
Yes, it is. We know that lockdowns have impacts on people's mental health. We knew that before we went into this. But now that we have prolonged lockdowns, it's having more of a severe impact on young people, particularly young people, young parents at home trying to juggle everything, but also young kids trying to get by with disturbed sleep habits and having excessive amounts of time on screens. It impacts on children's sleep, which is a foundation for good mental health. It impacts on their getting outside and exercising, which also impacts on their mental health. We need to be fair and reasonable and sensible when we're making these decisions for young people.
So are you calling on the Premier to lift these curfews immediately?
Absolutely, I am. These curfews have to be lifted for the people of Reid, particularly the people in the LGA of Burwood and Strathfield and in the suburbs of Wentworth Point, Newington and Sydney Olympic Park. These people are under enormous stress with the curfew in place and it's unreasonable.
Why is Burwood still in that category?
Well, the case numbers certainly don't justify having that in place. There are 45 new cases yesterday compared to the City of Sydney, which had 474 cases. And yet the City of Sydney isn't in harsh lockdown like Burwood is. So based on case numbers, it just doesn't add up.
It certainly doesn't. We heard from the New South Wales Treasurer today, Dominic Perrottet, who has argued that Sydney needs to come out of this together. Would you reiterate that those 12 LGA areas of concerns with higher case numbers get the same freedoms as other parts of Sydney once we hit that 70% vaccination?
Look, definitely people who are fully vaccinated will have more freedoms than those that are not fully vaccinated. But it needs to be, I think, a very staggered approach. It needs to be fair. It needs to be reasonable. We're still dealing with a highly infectious disease, but we need to make decisions that are in the interests of the people. It may be that we look LGA to LGA, not necessarily all LGAs at the same time across New South Wales.
So you would accept that high case numbers in some LGAs like Canterbury Bankstown might have to stay under harsher conditions for longer?
Well, our decisions, and particularly for the New South Wales Government, their decisions need to be informed by the data. The data should not make the decision for them. It should inform their decision. They should interpret the data and make the best decision for the people in that particular area. So if the case numbers are skyrocketing, the vaccination rates are not at an acceptable level, and if the testing rates are low, then the decision would need to be to protect the most vulnerable people in that particular area by in keeping the lockdowns in place. I think it needs to be decisions based on local areas rather than across the board of New South Wales.
Well, Fiona Martin, thanks so much for your time this morning. We'll see if we can get you some answers, because there's a few anomalies there that just don't make sense to anyone living in your electorate or outside of it, I might say. So we'll see if we can get those answers.